Hey, Alexandra, how you doing? Okay, thank you so much for including your work here. Um, let's jump over to your presentation and let's go ahead and get started. I just want to reduce this just a little bit so it fits in the window here. So that looks good. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I think the logo that you developed is pretty interesting. These resemble little business cards so that they're linked together. That's a visually and very engaging. A couple of recommendations. I would say to kind of make the stroke of this a little bit less prominent so that this more resembles what a business card might look like. Um, because what you're doing here visually, you're showing that you're linking these business cards together, and that's exactly what you're doing. And we can see that in your scenario sketches of using without the app, where the guy has all the cards in front of him, and then with the app, it's just one fell swoop. You have everything in access right in front of you. So, and plus, I think that if you were to enhance this a little bit further, maybe reduce it a little bit, bring it more closer to the X height of the other uh, uh, letters in the typeface, it'll more resemble an I. And I would also consider watch your kern. This like it almost looks like a B. The BR is separate. Watch your kerning, the space between your letters. Work on the logo a little bit. So try to make those two elements look a little bit more like business cards themselves, and then make that whole configuration look a little bit more like an I for bridge by just reducing it to size of the X height. Okay. Other than that, it's a really great concept. Ideation of the problem. So you have your basic definition of the problem, and then you also have your solution here. So you might rename this ideation and solution of the problem, or ideation of the problem with intended solution, or something like that, because this is a problem solution. It's not just a problem page. So then you have your target audience. Um, you know what? You might consider defining this just a little bit more development here. Also, everything's just jumbled together here right in the middle of the page. For just, I would add maybe a little space between these lines just to kind of differentiate the different um, audience attributes. Okay, and then we go into the four main features of the app. That's great. We go to competition. So we have functions and features as your four main features, right? Then we go into research findings. So you've got your competitor there. That's fantastic. And you have this building block section. So that's excellent too. You're defining the software you're going to use. User information. So this is actually a kind of an extension of the solutions page. So that's cool. Then we jump right into our pros cons. So you know what I don't see? I don't see a well, you've got a competition page here. You've only got one competitor. I would recommend at least two. And also with your competition page, you want to analyze the pros and cons, both pros and cons of the functionality and features of the competition website or app, the visual design of the competition app, as well as the usability. So again, in summary, at least two competitors, and try to include the pros and cons of functionality and features, visual design, and usability. Okay, so then we jump into our just the building blocks. So you have your user information. Then we jump into the personas. That's fantastic. And one thing I want to mention about your personas is right now your personas aren't showing a diverse group. You're showing three individuals that are very, very much very similar to the same attributes of a the target, and that is that I think that they're this is he's a BFA in graphic design, so he's a student, and that's great. Oh, and actually, he's a newly graduated BFA in graphic design. Currently seeking out various dimensions. So he's a job seeker. That's great. So that's perfect for him. That's a great persona right there, a student. Then you have Ashley, who's an MBA professional. But Ashley and John, even though they are very close in age, I would differentiate the age. I mean, they're very, very close in their background. One's a business owner, and the other's an MBA, but one's 28 and one's 27. So I would definitely get an older and maybe even an African American or um, another representation of race in here, so that we have a nice diverse cross section of demographic information based on your personas. Then we jump into our scenario. We got one We've got a scenario, but with and without the app. And these are great. I mean, I think it's so obvious that this is just a superior way of collecting and holding business cards than the old analog way. I'm just a little concerned about the sketches. Now, we're not looking for Rembrandt sketches, but this one is just, it's really difficult to ascertain what's going on here. I think just try to reinforce those sketches a little bit so they're just a little bit more. Actually, I think this is the frame right here. I know he's holding his heads in his hands, but let's get a sad look on. Let's just try to differentiate that as that individual who's kind of flustered with all the business cards. That'll work just fine. Wireframes, good job. Good wireframes look great. Then your paper prototype, which you have assembled, and then you've selected and photographed the paper prototype for it. That's fantastic. Um, that's great. Now you've got your prototype testing. Once the page that users don't select a share, then this is great. You're running through your testing scenarios. That's fantastic. One thing I would recommend, now you don't have to include it in this particular, but I want to include some things that need to be included from here moving on for your final presentation of the process book, which is due next week. Wireframes look great. I'd like to see digital sketches of all the screens. And those aren't wireframes. Those are actual digital renderings of all screens with everything, with logos intact and everything. And let me just explain that in 1 second. But so right now you've got, you're up to photographs of the visual testing. So right now what we need to do to wrap this up, not this week, but for next week, is you need to write an analysis summarizing the resulting of the testing session. So it's a test results page, basically, where you're writing an analysis. You want your digital mock-ups of all screens. That's really important. So this way, any interested party can look and really get a good idea of what the actual app is going to look like visually. So that's an important piece of information for any stakeholder, investors, et cetera, who might be interested in the project. So digital mock-ups of all screen. Then, of course, a project summary. And then the bibliography, of course, including all your research. Then a couple of recommendations. Not required but recommended are a page of influences. So what influenced your design and your concept development decisions associated with the assignment. Some mind maps. Scenario task flows might be a really, really interesting thing. Sitemap might be also an interesting thing. And that's basically all I've got now. So this is fantastic. You are well along your way. I noticed that you hadn't submitted the actual prototype for feedback, and that that's okay as long as we have something here for feedback. That's great. You satisfy the recommendations and the requirements therein. But just note that if we're going straight to prototype, then I'll just have comments in grading, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so Alexandra, a really fantastic job. Be sure to take a look at the week 5 announcement. The welcome to week 5. I'm sorry, the welcome to week 4 announcement for our team assignments coming up next week. All right, Alex. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. Thank you very much, Alexandra.